This is October 28, 2024 at DELRAY Beach Nuna's Treasure and the Traditions Workshop, Tradition 11 with Miss Carrie B. Tradition 11. Go ahead, Miss Carrie.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you guys for having me again. It's nice to see you guys. I recognize you. So Tradition 11, my name is Carrie. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My home group is the New Horizons group in beautiful Bend, Oregon, and I'm currently living in the disciplines of steps 10, 11, and 12. So Tradition 11 in its original form reads, our relations with the general public should be characterized by personal anonymity. I like that word personal, and I'm going to come back to it. So we think AA ought to avoid sensational advertising. Sensational is another one that I'm going to come back to. Our names and pictures as AA members ought not be broadcasted, filmed, or publicly printed. Our public relations should be guided by the principle of attraction rather than promotion. There is never need to praise ourselves. We feel it better to let our friends recommend us. Okay, so get a few myths and misconceptions out of the way. Tradition 11 is not our anonymity tradition. That's Tradition 12. I know that we all hear that Tradition 11 is the anonymity tradition, but Tradition 11 is actually our public relation policy. And even in the short form, it tells us that. It says in the short form of Tradition 11, our public relation policy, which is Tradition 11, is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal, there's that word again, anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. So the reason I point out the word personal, both in the long form and the short form, is because they put it in both the long form and the short form. I don't know how many of you guys have heard, maybe if you're at a Tradition 11 study or where people are sharing about Tradition 11, and you'll hear people say, well, I can break my own anonymity all I want. It's other people's anonymity that I have to make sure is protected. No, that's an entirely another tradition. And it's actually a spiritual principle of respect. We don't break each other's anonymity. That is what the fellowship's name means, right? And the fellowship's name, anonymity, Alcoholics Anonymous, means the protection for the member, right? So that came 15 years before this tradition was put into play. And that type of anonymity, because there's three types of anonymity in AA, that type of anonymity, the type of anonymity that our name talks about, is the type of anonymity that protects each other, right? So like when we're in the grocery store, I don't say, hey, I saw you at the AA meeting last night, right? That's what our name means, is that we're anonymous and we're protected. But that has nothing to do with Tradition 11. Tradition 11 means my personal anonymity I have to protect. It means that I need to always maintain my personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. I don't get to be the face of AA. I don't get to go and tell people that I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous and associate myself with AA. Now that doesn't mean that I haven't. I was the girl for my first few years with the Soberlicious bumper sticker, right? Flipping people off as I'm driving terribly. I mean, that does not, so Tradition 11 is not here to protect me from alcoholic shame and stigma. Tradition 11 is here to protect AA from me and my big ego, and me trying to be the face of AA. And so that's what our public relation policy is really all about. So it has nothing to do with me breaking your anonymity. It's got everything to do with me maintaining my own anonymity at the level of my personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. I'm going to go first to the 12 Traditions Illustrated, and on the last page, well, it's only 2 pages of Tradition 11, but on the last page, at the top of the page, it reads, alcoholics who have recovered through our program are themselves the strongest attraction that AA has. When people are asked what led them to seek AA's help, the answer most given is an AA member. Their chances would have been slim if all of us had remained completely in hiding. But many of us have chosen to tell our friends, neighbors, employees, employers, coworkers, doctors, or spiritual advisors that we're in AA. And when we do so, we are not breaking our anonymity in the meaning of this tradition. Because remember, there's 3 different types of anonymity, right? There's the anonymity that our namesake is after, us protecting each other, right? Making sure that we don't break each other's anonymity. That's what our name is about. And then there's our public relation policy, where I have to maintain my personal anonymity. And then there's anonymity in our anonymity tradition, which is tradition 12, which the definition of that is personal sacrifice, sacrificing personal ambitions for the common good. And so there's 3 different types. And today we're talking about the public relation policy. So when it's saying that we're telling our friends, neighbors, employers, and coworkers and doctors, spiritual advisors that we're in AA, we're not breaking anonymity. The literature is very consistent with each other throughout all of the literature in AA, whether it's Pass It On or the 12 Traditions Illustrated or the 12 and 12 or AA Comes of Age. It's all, there's 2 different things you'll hear. One is breaking your anonymity, which I don't get to do ever, no matter what. And 2 is disclosing my membership, which I get to do. So what is the difference? Well, the line is where it becomes public. So when I'm disclosing my membership, which I get to do with anybody who I find helpful, right? The drunk in the park that I'm trying to 12-step, my doctor, my daughter, my family, my employer. Like, I get to disclose my I get to disclose my membership and say I'm an alcoholic, I'm an AA member to anybody I want, so long as it doesn't cross that line into the public, right? So once it crosses that line, once I disclose my membership on the level of press, radio, and films, I have broken my anonymity, and I don't get to break my anonymity. That's a tradition violation. So I can disclose my membership. I cannot break my anonymity. And so those 2 terms are not used interchangeably anywhere in our literature. Our literature talks about disclosing our membership a lot, and that it's a positive thing, just like this paragraph describes. Because if I didn't disclose my membership, then how would other people know that I'm in AA when I go on a 12-step call or when I am visiting my doctor or whatever, right? But what I don't get to do is break my anonymity, because that means that I've done it on the public level. So moving on, it says, suppose a sick alcoholic never has the good fortune of meeting an AA. How is such a person going to find us? The search would be difficult if the local group thinks that it should be anonymous too. The tradition is talking about personal anonymity. And I said it like that because the word personal is in italics, and that's why I'm focusing on that word so much, is because it reminds me I'm to protect my own personal anonymity. Alcoholics will not be attracted to AA if they don't know that it exists, or if they have a distorted, unfavorable impression of its members or its program. So giving the general public an accurate picture of AA is the chief job of our public information committees. In addition, they often carry the message to certain groups, from police officers to personnel directors, those whose work includes contact with active alcoholics. Now, that last paragraph that I just read, that's talking about our CPC committees and our PI committees, public information and cooperation with the public, or cooperation with the professional community. And in those places, I do disclose my membership, but I don't break my anonymity. And the long form of the tradition that says we think AA ought to avoid sensational advertising, that doesn't mean that we don't advertise. We do advertise. It's called PI. It's called public information, right? You'll see commercials. We refer to them in AA as PSAs, the public service announcements. And the difference between a public service announcement And what would be sensational advertising is, I will give you an illustration. So I don't know if any of you have seen a public service announcement, a commercial for Alcoholics Anonymous, or a billboard, or an ad on a shopping cart, or a park bench, or in a bus, in a public transportation service. But we do have our name out there. Now, our name, Alcoholics Anonymous, is not anonymous, and our fellowship is not anonymous. It's just the members that are anonymous. So in those public service announcements, you won't see a face and you won't see a name of any AA member, whether it's in print or on TV or on a billboard. What sensational advertising would be is when you drive under a billboard, and you won't see this, but this would be sensational advertising. You see a big billboard with a horrific car wreck and a half of a body hanging out of the car, blood everywhere, with a bottle still in hand that says AA saves lives, right? That would be sensational advertising. If you look up the word sensational, it's for shock value. It's for, oh my God, that frothy emotional appeal. We don't do that. We don't want to talk anybody into coming to AA. What we will use is the simple information of our phone number and the simplistic text of, I don't know, there's so many different ways that I've seen them do this, but one of them is, if you still enjoy your drinking, that's your business. If you want to stop but can't, that's ours. Call AA, and then our phone number. So it's something non-intrusive, non-accusatory. We're not offering to save your life. We're not threatening that if you continue drinking, you're going to die. It's not sensational. It's just information about where to find us. And that's what our public information committees and our CPC committees do. So I want to read something out of AA Comes of Age next, which I think is on page 43. Yes, it is. Okay. So let's see here. It's toward the bottom of the page. It says, for the first time, I saw AA's anonymity for what it really is. I say it like that with the tone of my voice because those words are in italics, what it really is. It isn't just something to save us from alcoholic shame and stigma. Its deeper purpose is to actually keep those fool egos of ours from running hog wild after money and public fame at AA's expense. It really means personal and group sacrifice for the benefit of all AA. Right then, I learned to I resolved to learn our 12 traditions by heart, just as I had learned the 12 steps. And if every AA did the same thing and really soaked up these principles, we drunks could hang together forever. And for me, that means that personal sacrifice that I have to make is a spiritual principle. It's not some sort of a rule, right? If these spiritual principles that are the traditions were rules or laws, they probably wouldn't mean as much to me, to be quite honest. If I'm being real honest, like I am an anarchist. It's almost like, well, rules were made to be broken, right? And laws, you can pay off a speeding ticket. But spiritual principles, my life actually depends on the obedience of spiritual principles. And so these carry a much heavier weight for this alcoholic. I'm sorry, I didn't turn my phone off. So what I'm trying to get at is, I'll give you an illustration. I used to meet those I sponsor for step work at the library right before my home group, because we used to meet right across the street from the library, and the library here is great. They have these little private tutor rooms, they call them, and you can reserve them for no cost, and it was perfect for step work. And so the library, though, is right downtown. And around certain time of the year, like this time of the year, you would sometimes see a news crew out there asking people, the public who are coming and going out of the library and coming in and going, what they feel on measure blankety blank, or how they feel on this topic that's about to be voted on, or whatever. Well, I was leaving the library and there was a news crew out there and they caught me with a microphone. And anybody who knows me knows that I can get on a soapbox. And when they asked me what I felt about this particular topic, which is actually one that I have a lot of feelings, thoughts, and opinions on, I was all too happy to share and say, absolutely, absolutely you can interview me. And at that time, I realized that I was wearing a Roundup t-shirt, which didn't come out and say Alcoholics Anonymous. So if these were rules or laws, I could probably find a loophole. It had a circle, and then inside of the circle, there was a hammer, a screwdriver, and a wrench that made up a triangle. And it said Tools of Recovery. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous is such a big organization, and we've been around for so long that it's not just our members that know what that circle and triangle mean anymore. Mm-hmm. And yes, if I was looking for a loophole, I could have probably done the interview. But I had to sacrifice my personal ambition for the common good. And I don't want to set an example for anybody else in AA that they can go on the news wearing an AA shirt, spouting off about a political issue. And so I had to respectfully decline with my teeth clenched and probably my butt cheeks clenched all the way home, right? I declined. And I'll tell you, all the way home, I was thinking, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Oh, I could have gone in the bathroom and turned my shirt inside out. I could have done this. I could have done that. But the point is that I did have enough understanding and practicing of these principles by this time to where it wouldn't have sat right with me. It would have been a loophole. And if I'm looking for loopholes in spiritual principles, then I probably need to go back to the steps. And that's all there is that's all there is to that. Years later, I learned that Bill W. did much of the same thing one time. So I'm going to read a little story out of the book, Pass It On. 314, I think, page 314. Is it 314? 315. 314. Okay. 314 and Pass It On. When Time magazine wanted to put Bill on its cover, that is, put the back of his head, so his face wouldn't have shown, and neither would his name, on the front of the magazine, Bill declined, and declined the cover story as well. Well, at first glance, you think that wouldn't break any anonymity, putting the back of his head on the front of the magazine, but these are spiritual in nature. It's not black and white. He reasoned, for all I know, a piece of this sort could have brought AA 1,000 members, possibly a lot more. Now, how many times have you heard somebody break their anonymity on Facebook or posting a coin or posting their Roman numerals or something like that, saying, well, you never know who I'm going to help. Somebody might see that I'm sober and think, oh my gosh, if they can do it, I can do it, right? So if that is what they're saying if I can help even one drunk, it's worth it. Well, listen to what Bill says about that. He says, for all I know, a piece of this sort could have brought AA 1,000 members, possibly a lot more. Therefore, when I turned that article down, I denied recovery to an awful lot of alcoholics. Some of them might already be dead. And practically all the rest of them, well, we may suppose are still sick and suffering. Therefore, in a sense, my action has pronounced the death sentence on some drunks and commenced others to a much longer period of illness. But I went well over on the conservative side because the requirements of the piece would have tended to create a clear and colorful public image of me as a person. This would have created for the future, I'm sure, a temptation in our power-driving people to get like pieces, presently with full names and pictures. For this reason, I estimated that it would be better for some to die and others to suffer rather than to set such a perilous precedent. Therefore, I declined the publicity, and I must confess, it wasn't easy. That is true sacrifice. He had the opportunity to bring AA a lot of members, but he was watching out for the future of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And what I have to ask myself on every one of these traditions, because none of the traditions has made anything in AA easier or get done quicker. I guarantee you that's not why they're there. They make things more difficult and more time consuming because they're not here for the current state. They're here for the future of Alcoholics Anonymous. We respect the traditions today so that 10 years down the line, they're still safe. And if Bill would have done that, he says, then people would have made him an excuse and they would have given interviews as well. And they would have been put on the cover of Time magazine as well. And so he was watching out for AA's future by not setting that precedent. And I'm really grateful that he didn't. There's also another little story, and it's short, and I'm just going to read it out of AA Comes of Age on page 135. And this is always one of my favorites to talk about when it comes to anonymity, and the public relation policy. So it says on page 135 of AA Comes of Age, the kind of sacrifice that we shall all need to make is beautifully illustrated by a talk I recently had with a certain Texas lady. This is Bill Wilson talking. Her temptation was extreme because she is in show business and has great national popularity as an entertainer. This is what she told me. I sing in the best bar rooms only, and I have been doing so for 15 years. Within a year after joining AA, I lost about 10 pounds. The bags came out from under my eyes, and I began to look like a human being. My manager couldn't figure it out, but at last I told him what had happened to me. At once he said, "But aren't you and I going to tell the public about this? Why, this would make terrific publicity, both for AA and for you." Well, I said, temporarily, I know that it would. Other people have proved that. But please, not for me. Alcoholics Anonymous has a principle called anonymity. No public big shots allowed. We know that AA can't be run like show business no matter what the short-term benefits may be. And I'm going to pause right there just for a second to insert my own, I'm not reading anymore. And that's what I have to ask myself whenever I want to do something because of the short-term benefits, and it might not be in alignment with one of the spiritual principles. I have to say, yes, the short-term benefits would help people, but the long-term effect could hurt the future of AA. What is the precedent we're setting, right? Whether it's a non-alcoholic drug addict in a community that doesn't have any NA, or, there's 100 different excuses that I hear, but with perfectly good intent that we allow these things because it could help in the short-term benefit. But what is the long-term harm? It's so much greater than the short-term benefit. AA saved my life and my career. Therefore, the future welfare of Alcoholics Anonymous is more important to me than any publicity that I could get as an AA member. A little wispily, she added, Bill, I often see drunks in my audience and I wonder how I can help them. If only I could tell them from the stage that I am in AA. But that would only be temporary, wouldn't it? In the long run, we would all be ruined if everybody did it. I looked at that lady from Texas and I was glad, very glad, because I myself had a strong tendencies toward the pursuit of prestige, wealth, and power. All of AA's traditions have borne down upon me with great force. You will remember that episode back in our living room on Clinton Street. That was the time when my group told me I could never become an AA professional. With nearly every tradition, much of the same thing has happened. At first, I obeyed because I had to. I would have lost my standing in AA if I had not. And after a while, I begun to obey because I saw the traditions were wise and right. While I conformed because it was right to do so, I still resisted inwardly. This is my favorite part. It always gives me chills. This was particularly true of anonymity. Today, I hope that I have come to a time in my AA life when I can obey because I really want to obey, because I really want the traditions for myself as well as for AA as a whole. Therefore, each of our 12 traditions is really an expression of the deflation that each of us have to take, of the sacrifice that we shall all have to make in order to live and work together. And it's one of my favorite readings in Comes of Age. Just such great examples of sacrifice, personal sacrifice, for the good of AA. And, there's a couple of really good things also in the 12 and 12, in the essay on Tradition 11 in the 12 and 12, and I'll close with that. If I can get there. This book is really little. Here we go. Yeah, I have the words in my 12 and 12 and my Comes of Age and my Pass It On all highlighted with perfectly good intent. I mean, it says that throughout, right? Because we don't break these traditions because out of disrespect, out of a lack of respect, we break them out of a lack of understanding, right? And it's always with perfectly good intent. Oh, but I can help this person. And that's why it's so important to study and understand and practice these principles. So yeah, I'm going to read the very last line of the Tradition 11 essay in the 12 and 12. It's on page 183 if you have an older 12 and 12. It says, each member, well, I'll just read the whole paragraph. This, in brief, is the process by which AA's Tradition 11 was constructed. To us, however, it represents far more than a public relation policy. It is more of a denial of self-seeking. The tradition is a constant and practical reminder that personal ambition has no place in AA. Here it is. In it, each member becomes an active guardian of our fellowship. And I love the wording that each member becomes active guardian of our fellowship, because there was for a while there, I expected each member to be an active guardian of the fellowship, right? And newcomers don't know. When they come in, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And with perfectly good intent, you do some things that maybe go against these principles. And that's okay. That's okay, because the steps are there to offer us the spiritual awakening. And that's the first legacy for a reason, right? And we're protected by the third tradition to act and behave and spout off whatever we want and break as many traditions as we want. But ideally, after we have that spiritual awakening, we start to become an active guardian of the fellowship by practicing these traditions, by learning these traditions, by studying these traditions. And I just think it's beautiful how forgiving the language is, but also how inspired I am when I read that I become an active guardian of these traditions. So with that, I hope I filled enough time, and I'm going to turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ms.